As I went through law school, I saw the opportunities that being a lawyer affords you. Like, it gets you a seat at the table, because for the people involved, there are a lot of smart business people that don't want to be blindsided by legal things. So as a lawyer, I can get in the table that way.
What made you decide to become a lawyer?
So when I graduated from college, went to work for a consulting company, Anderson Consulting. Was doing okay, but I didn't find it interesting or anything. It didn't grab me. And I was doing like systems consulting, like big IT implementations, and I thought it was boring. So I started, I was at that point in my early 20s and started looking for the next thing. Didn't really have anything. So I thought, I should just go to law school because that's kind of broad. I could do a lot of different things with it. So I just decided to go to law school. There's also an economic downturn at that point, so it wasn't lots of interesting job opportunities. So I went to law school, and while I was in law school, I got interested in real estate. Like, I was buying houses and flipping them. That's why I paid for law school, doing that. And so then when I got out, I'm like, that was cool. And I decided to go into real estate law so I could do more deals. And what I found, so my original decision was basically I didn't have something else to do. So I thought I'd go to medical school or law school. I did one of those typical like things about get some more education. And then as I went through law school, I saw the opportunities that being a lawyer affords you. Like, it gets you a seat at the table. Because for the people involved, there are a lot of smart business people that don't want to be blindsided by legal things. So as a lawyer, I can get in the table that way. So that's what got me there. Was nothing else interesting to do. What kept me there though was getting a seat at the table. And to this day, I have lots of real estate, a decent portfolio of that. I still do real estate law, and it turned out to be a good move. It was a very good investment for me. So
interesting. So you had enough foresight to see the table too. Most people don't really see the table.
Yeah, I bumped into it a couple times. That's why, because I was in the entrepreneur world, and I just, I would see lawyers show up at the foreclosure auctions where I was buying, and I'd be like, why is that guy here? And then I'd find out, oh, he buys properties on the side, or, oh, he's partners with this guy. And I was like, oh, so he's doing the paperwork. And just what I saw is the easier part and not dealing with contractors all day. I was like, oh, I like that. Because I was dealing with contractors too, and that's, its own thing. It's not horrible, but they're residential rehab contractors are a handful to manage sometimes.
Oh yeah, I got a buddy who's into that sort of stuff, and he told me all kinds of horror stories about somebody starting on the kitchen project and then dropping it midway through, disappearing for 2 months, and then coming back after 2 months and be like, okay, I'm ready for you to pay me the rest of the fee. It's like, what are you talking about? I still have half the kitchen, waiting for you. So that seems to be a common thing.
It attracts that kind of contractor is generally one of the lower skilled contractors. Like someone who does residential rehabs for investors is typically working at very low margins and just not great at what they do. Don't have great teams, don't have great systems. And so you can manage them. It's just, you have to get to the size where you have your own crews. Like, you got to have an electrician you employ pretty much full time, and a plumber, and you really need that. And before then, it's tough going. So, I like that business, but I wouldn't do that business again. It was a good place to start for me.
Interesting. So you get your real estate law degree. You figure out there's a table. You want to get a seat at it, and you start getting the seat at the table. At what point did you decide that you're also going to teach people how to make money in this industry?
So I was about 10 years into, that's actually a funny story. So I was about 10 years into my investing career, and I got an opportunity to take over one of those Saturday morning talk shows. You probably have heard them. The Saturday morning talk shows, they used to be bigger than they are today, but they have Saturday morning talk show. This was on real estate, and your estate was the title of it. And the guy was retiring after like 40 years. So he was leaving. So the station, somehow got me. I don't remember how that happened, but they got in touch with me and said, hey, would you like to take over this show? And I said, yeah, sounds like a good opportunity to, get some law business. At the time I was married to a real estate agent. So I'm like, she might get some business. And I did find out that those are paid shows. So I was paying like $1,800 a week for each episode. So I was like, I should get enough work out of that to make it, and they said, oh, we'll sell advertising too. So I believe them. And so I started doing the show, and about 3 months in, we were doing well. We were like number 7 in the Philadelphia market, which was good. But I had no advertisers and no money coming in. I was just shelling out $1,800 a week for this show. And I wasn't making that much money back then. I was making maybe 120 a year. So 1,800 a week, adds up to like 100,000 a year. So it's not a good math. So I got a little desperate, and I'd written a book, I guess about 10 years into my investing career, on how to do what I do. I always wanted to write a book, and I thought I'll do that. I actually marketed. I put out an infomercial. I knew so little at the time that I didn't know my infomercial worked. This proves how you just have to learn. So I spent like $20,000 on ads, and I got about $20,000 in sales, but it cost me
You broke even.
I know, but it cost me about $3,000 to fulfill. Because back in those days,
but I had the buyers.
I know, but I was so not knowledgeable. I didn't know that. I didn't know anything. So I'm like, well, this is stupid. I made $20,000 in sales. It cost me $3 or $4 grand. Now I've got $16,000. So I tried it again, and I lost another $3 or $4 grand. I'm like, well, this is really stupid. I better stop this.
Oh, come on.
I kid you not. I stopped. I didn't even know it was successful. I was so not knowledgeable. And so
were you competing against anyone famous back then for the airtime?
There was like Carlton Sheets, who had no money down real estate. But I had Bob Diamond's Your Fortune in Foreclosures. It was great. And I was like showing my own properties. I was the real deal with that stuff, because I was showing my own properties. I'm like, this is one we're working on. This, I'd show one I just got, one was in progress, and one that was just finished. So that was, it was like more authentic, I think, than other guys.
Yeah, you still have that vibe, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's hard to maintain on the internet, but you still have it.
Not just me. So anyway, I get like a little desperate about 3 months into my radio show. And this is 5 years after the infomercial debacle, which is my shame. So I'm like, crap, I got to do something. So I just did, you see those sweeps come through. It'll say, hey, meet us at the Hilton on City Line Avenue, Saturday at 12 or Saturday at 4, and we'll tell you about how to invest in real estate. So I just modeled that, and I had a 20,000 person audience. So I just went on the air and said, hey, if you want to learn about real estate, I'm going to do an event this weekend. I'll teach you about what I do. And so I did a 90-minute presentation, just doing whatever I did. And I sold people the book and a weekend seminar. And it was like, I don't know, I think I charged $1,000 for both. And I sold 13 of them. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. I got $13,000. Now I'm not going broke from the stupid radio show. And then I held the weekend seminar. People really liked it. Then I said, well, if you want to, I got a coaching program, you can come. I had learned more by then. And so I just would take people to the sheriff's sales. And I'd say, come to the sheriff's sale with me. I'll show you how it works. If you want to bid on some stuff, you can bid on stuff. You can come as I do my due diligence. And I would just say, I'm going to take these 3, but you saw those other ones. Take any of those you want. And it worked. Like I got people on recurring revenue, and that was my launch. That was my big launch. And then from there, I finally figured it out. As I'm sure you know, you want to have a coaching program. You want to have follow-on programs, because getting your customer is only step 1. And if you break even, you've got the keys to the kingdom. And that's not easy to do. But that's how I launched my entrepreneurial career. And, it's one of those things that if I knew today what I didn't know back then, like in 1999 when I did my infomercial, my life would be different.
Although you seem to have a pretty good life. At least on paper.
I do have a good life. But what killed me, I'll tell you what rubbed me. So with the show, there's a guy who started a show at the same time I did, which was on tax sales. And he launched his show. And, he got picked up by some guys who knew the coaching business. And so they started working with him. And they had $450 million in sales over 4 years. That was way more than I had. Because I had I sold $20,000 twice. So I had $40,000 sales from my infomercial. And he had $440 million worth of sales from his infomercial. And I just realized the difference often is if you get together with the right expertise and learn what the heck you're doing, you'll be much more successful, much faster, or maybe you'll be successful when otherwise you wouldn't have been. And that helped me appreciate the value of aligning with people who know what the hell they're doing. Because if you don't, it's just dead end after dead end. You can succeed. Sometimes you crush it, but it's much harder and much less certain. So that's why I laugh about it. That's because we all have stories like that in some way. Like, oh, I invented that thing and then I never patented it. I never pursued it. And now look, it's, on TV or something.
No, you're absolutely right. Everybody has that. No matter how successful they are, they'll always be looking back. It's kind of like when you're giving a talk in front of a crowd and there's one guy being an asshole.
Oh yeah, it's required.
And he's being vocal about it.
It's actually required. There's some rule somewhere that says there has to be a guy. He sits like this. This is how you know him. Like that.
Yeah.
And won't move no matter what you do. I actually had some advice from Robert Allen on that. You've heard of Robert Allen? Great marketer.
Yes.
Good guy.
Yep.
So what he told me, he said, ignore those people. He said, as a speaker, like you want to focus on them and like bring them along and get their attention. He said, just completely ignore them. He said, talk to the people that are like shaking their head and leaning forward. He said, talk to them because the energy from those people will either bring that person along or drown them out. He said, but your tendency is to look at that person and talk to them. He said, just don't, because it's just a bad thing. And I was like, he turned out to be right. To me, he turned out to be right.
Yeah, it's the rubberneck effect. It's like when there's something bad or something negative, you can't stop looking at it, thinking about it. It's how we are wired. It's actually a survival mechanism.
So I've heard you're talking about the one where we're tuned to like look at the bear that's racing at us and get out of the way.
Yeah, that's right. There's something in the bushes. We're going to be like, oh, what's that? What's that?